So Carolyn's pretty upset. I think she's had enough of this. Now, you have to bear with me on this video. I'm a little distracted. Some teenage girl just ran off the road into our ditch, knocked down our mailbox. It was pretty significant. I mean, she's fine, but I'll show you all that here in a little bit. But I wanted to get on with today's video the best I can. It's actually kind of hard to make videos when you're distracted. I've run into this problem a lot. You know, you spend all day trying to think of a video idea, and then you run into some issues, and then you get thinking about other things, and you don't really think about the script of your video. And I don't write scripts, but I do kind of rehearse it in my head what I want to talk about. So again, just forgive me. But I wanted to talk about this because this is a significant problem. As you know, Carolyn and I bought this property for $4,200. Had an old well in it. Now, when he advertised it, it was an artisan well is what he said. Now, artisan wells means that water's always bubbling up, which is fantastic. There's actually an artisan well not too far from here, and there's a natural spring down the hill. You probably could even call that an artisan well, but there is definitely one down this direction that bubbles up. They've got a faucet on it. The whole thing's pretty cool. When we got here, it was obvious it wasn't an artisan well. It was just a hole in the ground, and I've showed videos of that. When he sold it with pictures on Facebook Marketplace with a pump in it. Now, it was an above ground pump. This is a deep well pump. It's a long cylinder type of pump, and it goes down 100 feet or so. Don't quote me on all the numbers. I'm sure somebody's going to go back in the old videos and say, oh no, that's what it was. It doesn't matter what it is. When we got here, I just needed to get water. So we had this 5-inch pump. It was pretty big. It was probably a little bigger than what we needed. And we ran it down there the second day we were here. And it worked, but the water was just filthy dirty. So we had to constantly flush it out and try to do the best we could. I had a coffee can, one of these, covering the hole and little cutouts, and it was just a mess. This was all concrete bricks like this here. And a tree had fallen over and knocked it all down. So I had a 2x2 holding the pump up on a little rope. It was really makeshift, but even at that, it still had water in it. It was a lot of work trying to fill the IBC tank and try to keep everything clean and using filters, and it was a lot of work. Well, over time, I learned more and more about the well. I mean, I'd learned enough how to put a pump down there and how to buy a pump from Amazon. But as I got to learning more, I realized that there's a well liner in there. And the well liner, they only last 40 years, I think it is. Not very long, not an entire lifetime. So this was probably dug in the 60s. They didn't even dig them that deep back then. Now they dig them much deeper. Helps keep them cleaner, the groundwater. And this is all very confusing how this works. It goes down into bedrock is what it is. And so you have that bedrock water. Now imagine 200 feet down the hill, there is a natural spring. So that natural spring is being fed by this bedrock here. So just constant flow, like a river, underground river is what it is. I've actually seen footage of a video on YouTube. They lured a GoPro down there. It was an empty riverbed, but they put a light down on the GoPro and sent it all the way down there. And there was probably a cavern 10 feet high, just guessing. But it was empty, and they lowered it all the way to the bottom, and that was filled with water at one time. So this is probably how this works too. So you lower that pump down into the bedrock water. The problem is they didn't dig this very deep. Nowadays, they will take the well casing and they'll run it all the way down to that bedrock. But here, on this one, they only ran it down maybe 30 feet. I mean, it wasn't very far. So that means groundwater can seep down around that well casing, get down to the bottom of the well casing, and then drip down into the well on really heavy rains. Well, it's also broke. So there's a big hole in the side of the well casing. Oh, probably 15 feet down or so. That means groundwater can just flow right out of that hole down into the well. Well, after I learned this, what I did was I bought a well packer. A well packer is just a pipe like this, and it has rings, rubber rings around it, glued to it basically. And that rubber ring seals up against the well casing. So what you do is you take these pipes and you run it down, it's just PVC. You connect this PVC pipe to the well packer and you just start lowering it down. And it's really tight, so we had to take come along, and I had a root system and everything. I lowered that down all the way down to the bottom of the well casing. So that means in between the well casing and the PVC pipe, it's probably filled up with water now. It's like an inch gap in between the well casing and the PVC pipe. So that keeps the groundwater from going down into the well at 15 feet. But on really heavy rains, we still have that groundwater that comes down all the way down to that 30 feet mark. But as you can see, I've done a lot of work to this. I bought a different pump because now that 5-inch pump wouldn't fit, so I bought a 4-inch pump, which I like a lot better. It doesn't take near as much power to run. Of course, it doesn't pump water as fast. I think that first pump was 30 gallons per minute, and this one's 15 gallons per minute. And it doesn't deadhead near as bad, meaning that it steams up the water in there. It gets so hot. If you close this valve, that water has no place to go, so there's nothing cooling the pump, so it deadheads. I can run this pretty slow, and it never deadheads. And the reason is, the big reason is because the flow of the river down there I was telling you about can keep up with the flow of the pump. Whereas the 30 gallon, it would drain it out and just, there wouldn't be any water in there. So I built this building and I extended the roof out 2 feet on all 4 sides. That keeps the rain from coming out around the well hole here. I also put concrete down. I think I made that 6 inches thick. So there's concrete there. And I did the whole well area. So it's in a lot better shape. So when it rains, really heavy rain, I have to flush this well out. So in the springtime for the last 3 years, I've had to clean it out a lot. Big rains come down. I've even put in a French drain over here. And the French drain, should be able to see now, what we have underneath there is a pipe with holes in it. And so that water will come down here, go straight through the rock into that pipe and run down all the way around and on down the hill, staying away from the well house. But sometimes the rains get so bad it floods right over that and just washes right into there. So I've made a little temporary ditch here that helps take some of that water away also. And eventually I'll make that into a French drain. On those kind of days, I don't even do anything but just flush it out. First thing I do, you gotta wait 3 days because the ground is so saturated that it just keeps dripping down there to that 30 feet mark. Now, a lot of people are gonna say, oh, you need to dig another well and all that, but that's 5,000 bucks. I can live with this. You know, once a year in the springtime, I gotta deal with dirty water. So Carolyn doesn't mess with this setup very much. I don't think she's ever done anything with it. So I come out here about every 3 days and I fill the IBC tank with the well. Now I just use the generator. I've showed this before. I got a little propane, dual fuel. It also takes gas, but I use propane. Start it up, plug it in. That starts the pump and water comes out, and then I can fill the IBC tank. I fill buckets. I fill her sinks for the laundry. Now that Carolyn's son is here, I've been filling his buckets. You just get it all done out of the way, and you only got to do it every 3 days. And I've been really trying to stay on top of this now that he's here so we don't run out of water. Over the winter, I was doing it every 5, 6, 7 days, you know, whatever. But I've been really trying to stay on top of it. Now in the wintertime, this doesn't freeze. I've showed this before because I got a hole drilled down there about 70 feet on the black pipe here. You'll see the black pipe. I just put a hole in there. And so the water actually drains back down. So there's no water in the pipe to freeze. So in the wintertime, when we're having problems with the IBC tank, because the RV pump can freeze, not the tank, but the pump, has been known to freeze. It's done it twice now in the 3 years we've been here. We can still get water out of this. I just run this hose down the hill so it's always drained out. I take this piece off and take it inside so it doesn't freeze. But like I said, Carolyn never messes with this thing. Well, the other day, I had to go into town and she needed water for the sinks for her laundry water. And it was all coincidental, you know, just timing, bad timing. So I said, well, can I do it when I come back? Well, you know, I shouldn't have said that. I should have just said, okay, I'll get it done somehow or another. I would have done it. And she said, well, I can do it. So I started it all up for her. Now, normally I check everything. When I'm not in a hurry, I'll run a bucket of water here make sure the water's all clean. I do it every time. That way there's no risk of getting dirty water into the IBC tank. But this time I didn't. And the reason I didn't is we had a small brush fire by our house just the other day. I guess some ashes from the stove. I still had embers in them when I dumped the ashes. I always check. I checked that one, but I guess there was embers in it. And over a 2-day period, those embers somehow started a grass fire. No big deal. I grabbed a bucket. I came out here, filled the bucket up, ran it over there, dumped it on the fire. Did it 2 or 3 times, and every bucket was spotless, nothing in it, completely crystal blue. It was beautiful. So I didn't think I really needed to do anything. So I started up, put the hose in the IBC tank, and I said, okay, I'm out of here. She says, okay, I'll take care of it. And when I got back, she was pretty stressed that the water was dirty. She didn't realize it was dirty until she started filling her sinks. So that means the IBC tank has dirty water in it now. So she thinks. I don't think it's dirty. I mean, we ran to Berkey. The Berkey water looked okay, when I put it in there. But I could understand that initially she thought she had got the water in the tank dirty, because I try so hard not to let that water get dirty. So I came home, I said, no big deal, and I flushed the well out. Well, normally it takes 3 times to flush the well out, but it only took 1 time this time. And I was just confused. There wasn't any pattern to it. There was no rain, so there should have not been any dirt getting down in it. It was strange. I didn't understand what was going on. After a few days of thinking about it, I thought, well, you know what? I've seen this problem before, and I'll get to that in a minute. I noticed that this, over time, has been falling down into the well. You can see here I got, 6-inch pipe sticking out there? Well, this was sitting up against this. It used to stand way out here. I think what happened is the yellow rope, which is tied to the pump down there, stretched. And it stretched enough to allow this to fall down, well, the pump to fall down. Let's say that was 1 foot or 2. Now remember, we have a very shallow well. It's like 100 feet, 115 feet. And so our water column may be only 10 feet high. It's not very much. That's why they dig them so deep nowadays. But back then they didn't have to, because they didn't have pumps that sucked water quite as fast. Those above ground pumps. And it occurred to me what was happening is it was getting close to the bottom of the well. It probably wasn't touching, but it was close. And so for the first 2 bucketfuls or so, it was clean because there was none of that bottom dirt getting up into the pump yet. But by the time I got 10 gallons of water out of it, dirt is starting to get sucked up into the pump. And it was turning the water greenish. Not dirty, but green. Which is a clear indicator that there's mud and bedrock and all that getting sucked up in there. And you gotta be careful with that. You don't want that to get up in your pump. You could tear up your pump over time. So I just had to pull the pump back up just about 6 inches. That's all it took. And now I'm getting clean water again. But I don't want to raise it too high, because when that happens, then I'm always running out of water, because the water column is so shallow. It's just not, these old wells just are not designed for these new submersible pumps. She says, I'm not ever doing this again, because she didn't catch the dirty water. But it really wasn't her fault. It was my fault. I should have checked. I should have checked it with a bucket of water. What I really should have done is I should have pulled this out sooner. So I just thought I'd come over here and I show you what happened. This girl, I don't know why they got to race down this hill, but they do. They just race down it all the time, just as fast as they can. You would have thought that once she ran off into the ditch that she would have tried to stop, but she didn't. She must have hit the accelerator. From the way she described it, it sounds like that something must have broke on her steering column. But you can see here, it started out here, and she was all the way in the ditch. I mean, she was all the way down here. And then she hit the culvert here, took out the mailbox. I got that straightened up a little bit. So, and here you'll see that she about took out the car. I mean, she was right here, and the vehicle's right here. Dust all over the car now. And Then she comes back down onto this side, and she must have been playing Dukes of Hazzards, flying that car down. She's knocked off her oil pan. I got to be careful. I really don't want to show you where I live and all the, but now you can start to see the oil coming out. And she just took forever to get out of the ditch. You'd have thought she would have hit her brake at some point. Now she's back up on the road. But I think that has convinced me to back the truck up even further. In the wintertime, I like to keep it close to the road. That way I don't have to shovel out so much snow when it snows. Here I only got, what, 5 feet of snow to shovel out. But when I back it up further, got a lot more snow to. So, if you click this up next box, take to a video where I was talking about they're evicting her son. So I hope I can inspire you to work through your problems so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.